Good morning, students. Welcome to the science class. Today we are going to start our chapter 14, that is water. Water, a very important resource, which we are going to study about in detail. Like, if I tell you that if I give you a bucket of water every day for a week, imagine how your life would be. You have to manage everything in just one bucket of water, like cooking, cleaning, utensils, washing clothes, everything. Now, if you understand what are the other activities that for which you need water apart from drinking, there are many other activities for which you need water. So, how much water do we use? Let's consider it. Like if I tell you to write down in your notebook how much water do you use in a day, make a list of it. Drinking, like you are drinking a glass of water, or you are having a bath, then you are brushing, having a bath, washing utensils, washing clothes, toilet, cleaning floor, everything, any other activities. So you make a rough idea of how much water you may use. A mug or a glass, a bucket or any other container to measure the amount of water that you are using, making an estimate of it. So what you can do is you can calculate the amount of water needed by your family. First of all, you have to calculate it for a day, and then accordingly you will calculate it for a year. Now what you do is, when you have calculated for the year, now you divide that amount of water, that amount, the number of members in your family divided by the number. If you have four members in your family, divide that divided by 4. So you will know how much water is used by one person in your family. And if I tell you, like if there are 100 people in your locality, how much water will you use for that purpose? So you can have a rough estimate of how much water is needed for the activities that are happening due to water. Water is used in industries for producing almost all the things that we use. So we need water not only for our daily activities but also for producing many other things. So where does this water come from? If I tell you where do you get water, you may say that we get water from lakes, ponds, rivers, hand pumps, wells, and some of you might say that we get it from the tap water. Have you ever wondered where water in the taps come from? That the water that we get from tap is also, we get this water from the river only, river or well. Then it is supplied through the network of pipes. Each of us may be getting water into our homes in different ways, but finally all of us get water. Where do we get all of us get water from? Finally the source of water is ponds, lake, rivers and wells. We have discussed some of the sources of water. Where does the water come from to fill those ponds? Now we will discuss about them. So we know that in our previous classes also we have studied, we know that 2/3 of the earth is covered with water. Okay, and water that is in, most of the water is in oceans and seas. The water in the ocean and sea has many salt dissolves in it. The water is saline. Saline means it is a salty water. So it is not fit for drinking or doing any other domestic work like agriculture or industrial. You might have heard this lines of the poem, water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. In this the poet has described the plight of the sailors who have lost their way in the ship and they are lost in the ocean, and there is water everywhere but they cannot drink that water because of that water is so saline. Yet ocean plays a very important role in supplying water that we use. So how do we get, after all, water that we use is not saline? Because we know that this indirectly the water we are getting from is the ocean, but the water that we are drinking is not salty at all. Many of us, like we are staying in Kota and it is very far away from the ocean. Then also, how how are we dependent on ocean for water? How do the rivers and wells get water? How come the water from these sources is not saline? They are not salty. Here is what the water cycles come in. Water cycle, yes, you must have discussed, we have studied about the water cycle in our previous classes also. Have you ever noticed that if you spill a water somewhere, maybe while you are walking with a bottle in your hand and it spills on the floor, you will see after some times that water disappears. There is no water there. Same thing happens with the wet clothes. When we wash our clothes, wet clothes, we put it out in the sun and the water in that disappears and the clothes become dry. What happens to the water after the rain? The roads are wet, the rooftop and few other places there are puddles, and after some times you will see that there is no water, the water is gone. Do you remember, like in chapter 5, we had done an activity in which we had taken a salty water mixed with salt, and then what we did was we boiled that water. When we boiled the water was evaporated, and what was left behind? The salt was left behind. This shows when the water is evaporating, it does not take salt along with it. It leaves the salt behind. So water vapor so formed become a part of air and cannot usually be seen. We also found that heating is essential to convert water into vapor. However, we have seen that water changes into vapors also from the field, roads, rooftops, and land area. Means the water that was spilled on the ground, it disappeared because of the heat around us, and it became water vapor and it formed the air, so it disappeared. We also discussed in chapter that how I have told you salt water from the sea is left in the shallow pit to let the water evaporate. How the salt is made? What do is they take that sea water into a pit and let it evaporate. When it evaporates, whole water is evaporated and the salt is left behind. Let's take understand it again with a help of an activity. Take two plates and in two plates put equal amount of water. Equal amount of water means it should be equal. Plate should be of the same size and the water should also be of same. Means you put supposing 2 cup of water in one plate and equal amount of pour into the other. Observe and do one thing. Keep one plate directly under the sun and keep other plate under the shade of the day during the daytime. So does the water seems to disappear? Yes, it will disappear, but the water in the plate that is exposed to the sun will disappear faster as compared to that is in the shade. During daytime, sunlight falls on the water in the ocean, river, lakes, ponds. The field and the other land areas also receive sunlight. As a result, water from all these places continuously changes into vapor. See, evaporation, I told you before, also is a continuous process. However, the salt dissolved in the water are left behind as we had done it in chapter 5 activity when we heated the salt water. So, disappears and now you will understand that the water in which the shade will disappear will take more time to disappear as compared to water that we have kept under the sun directly. During the daytime, all the air surrounding us gets heated. See, because the sun is there, this warm air provides heat for evaporation of water in the shade. Thus, evaporation takes place from all open surfaces of water. As a result, water vapor gets continuously added to the air. However, evaporation of water is slow process. It is very slow, so it is we cannot notice it when we keep a bucket of water. We cannot notice it that yes, evaporation is taking place. Only if we heat the water on a burner, its evaporation takes place even faster. is this is the process of water transferring into air through the process of evaporation. So, this is all for today. In next class, we will study more in detail how the water is